Good morning, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another edition of Ranking the Albums. Today, we're going to take a look at the studio albums of one of the greatest heavy metal singers of all time. A guy that I know we all miss every day, taken from us way too soon, but he's got such a vast catalog of great music, whether it be with Elf or Rainbow or Black Sabbath or his great solo act Dio. That's the band we're going to take a look at today. All right, we've already kind of talked about Ronnie's albums with Rainbow and Black Sabbath, so today we're going to just center on the Dio band. Okay, and I'm going to rank the albums in the order that I kind of dig them. Interestingly enough, and I didn't realize this till after I went through the whole exercise, so I went and ranked all the albums, and then I was just kind of going through my notes, and I'm like, Jesus, it's almost the entire... Well, you know what? I'm not even going to spoil it. We'll get to that. We'll talk about it afterwards. I do want to say that there's a couple that I could have sworn I had. And I've heard all of them, of course, obviously. But there's a couple that I actually don't have the physical CDs, which I was kind of surprised because I thought I had everything. And, sometimes it could be... I've got so many CDs, but usually everything's very well organized. But I was kind of shocked that a couple of them were not here. So I'm not going to have them to show you, but I'm very familiar with them. So let's get started. So I'm going to go... So there's 10 in total. I'm going to go to my least favorite to my favorite. I will say I like all of these. There's some that are just, obviously, they're not as strong as the early stuff. I'll kind of talk about them each on their own. But, a lot of the same players in his bands kind of on and off throughout the careers. It's funny how a couple of guys, as I was kind of going through each album and looking at the lineup, it's like, it'd be surprised. There's some guys that were in his band for a long, long time that you don't normally associate with Dio's band, like Jeff Pilson on bass. Okay, who's most people, know from his days in Dokken, right? He's been with Foreigner for a long time. But, man, he was in Dio's band for a long time. I just kind of forgot how long he was in his band. So, anyway, let's get started. So, I'm going to go, and again, a couple of these, the two that are coming up, I actually don't own. I thought I had them, but I guess I don't. Probably going to have to rectify that, right? Because got to have them in the collection, right? 2004's Master of the Moon. So, that's the last studio album that they would do. And that, of course, features the lineup of Craig Goldie on guitar, Jeff Pilson, of course, on bass, Simon Wright on drums, and Scott Warren on keyboards. Pretty great lineup. Master of the Moon, solid album. My problem with the latter part of the Dio catalog is that I think that a lot of the albums sounded very similar. I mean, you could probably say that about a good chunk of the catalog. And I find that the last couple... didn't kind of have their own identity. Like Master of the Moon, good, heavy album. In fact, a lot of the latter half are very heavy, almost kind of like Sabbath style, like kind of what he did when he joined up with Tony and Geezer and Vinny in the Heaven and Hell band. Very kind of similar, good, heavy dirges, solid. Maybe not as memorable as some of the early catalog, but I think Master of the Moon... solid record. I dig it, right? So that's coming in at number 10. Coming in at number 9, same can be said for 2002's Kill and the Dragon, right? The one and only album that Doug Aldridge appeared on. And again, you kind of go back and think. I always seem to remember at that time, early in the 2000s, it just seemed to me like Doug was with the band for a long time. But, they only recorded that one album together. Okay, of course, also in the band at the same time was Jimmy Bain had come back, Simon Wright, again on drums. Simon played drums, it was either Simon or Vinny Appice. Both of them spent a lot of time in the Dio band, kind of back and forth, and Ronnie could always count on either one of those. Killing the Dragon, 2002, again, solid record. I don't know if Doug was the right guy for Ronnie's band. Okay, for Dio, I think Doug is a terrific guitar player. I think his style worked better in Whitesnake. Okay, now he's in Dead Daisies and all these other projects, right? I think that for some reason, Craig Goldie kind of, for me, sounds better in Dio than Doug is. And even though I prefer Doug's playing to Craig's, but it's a solid album. All right, it's a solid album. Again, a good latter period album, if somewhat generic sounding, if you can call a Dio album kind of generic. Again, I like a lot of these latter day albums. they're just not as kind of magical as some of the early stuff. Next up, coming at number 8 from 2000, I'm going to go with Magica. Okay. This is the big concept album. Part of it really works well. Some of it doesn't really work so well. Very cinematic, all right. I think, Ronnie really wanted to do like this kind of grand opus, and I think part of it really worked, all right. He had some really great songs in here, some kind of like filler pieces and orchestrations and things, kind of like mood stuff. But, overall, good album. I know he wanted to do a follow-up to that, but this album wasn't that successful. And, here on this lineup, you got Goldie, Bain, and Wright joining Ronnie. Good record. Probably, as far as like the whole concept thing, probably a decade too late. I think if he would have released something like that, of that scope, like probably in the late 80s, early 90s, maybe we would have seen a different story as far as like the mass acceptance. I think, the core fans enjoyed it and still enjoy it, but I think that, probably if he would have done it a decade before, I think it would have had a bigger impact. Number 7, I'm going to go with Angry Machines from 1996. This is a good album. So, of course, this is the lineup that's got Tracy G on guitars, who recorded twice with the band. Jeff Pilson again, also on bass. Vinny Appice and Scott Warren, okay, making up the lineup here. A very heavy album. I would say the 2 albums that they did with Tracy G on guitar are probably their heaviest albums. All right? Or if not, they're damn close to it. Institutional Man, Hunter of the Heart, Double Monday, Golden Rules. Don't tell the kids. Don't tell them that we're playing music so damn heavy. Right? Good album. Again, maybe, when you think of classic Dio songs, I don't know if there are any necessarily on here, but this is a very heavy album. I think if you're just into headbanging Ronnie James Dio and company with some great snarling vocals, that's one of the ones to check out, as is 1993 Strange Highways, another one that I don't own. I don't know where it is because I know I bought it. That also has basically the same lineup. Okay. I think a little more memorable than the Angry Machines album, and I think there's some really good riffing from Tracy G on that album. It's big, it's ballsy, it's beefy, it's crunchy, and Ronnie's just singing up a storm. And that album, of course, followed shortly on the heels of the Black Sabbath Dehumanizer album, right? So it's like the band just kind of got back together and went and just kicked complete ass. So if you love the kind of the real heaviness of Dehumanizer, which arguably is one of Sabbath's heaviest albums ever, Strange Highways and certainly Angry Machines falling right along with that as well. All right, next up, I'm going to go with 1990's Lock Up the Wolves, which I think is a very strong album. The one and only album with Rowan Robertson on guitar. This also featured, who else we got here? Jens Johansson on keyboards, of course, from Yngwie Malmsteen's Rising Force, the one and only album he would appear on. It's a great lineup on here. Simon Wright on drums, Teddy Cook on bass, along with Ronnie on vocals. This is a pretty terrific album. Of course, Rowan was a real youngster at the time, and unfortunately, this would be the only album he would do with the band. Because, of course, not long after that, Ronnie's back, getting together with the Sabbath guys, and Rowan just kind of went and did his own thing, and that was it. But some really great songs on here. Born on the Sun, Between Two Hearts, Wild One, the incredible Night Music, the incredible title track, Lock Up the Wolves. Some really heavy stuff on here. Evil on Queen Street, Walk on Water, Twisted, Why Are They Watching Me, and, of course, My Eyes to finish it all off with. Epic guitar riffs, lots of great solo, and Rowan, a very tasty player. I think if he would have kind of hung around with Dio's band for a couple more years, who knows? His place in Guitar Hero history might have been cemented. As it is, this was kind of like his big moment, and then that was it, right? He's been out there doing stuff since, but in kind of anonymity somewhat. A great player, good album. I always dug that cover art too. All right, next up we're going to go to 1985's Sacred Heart for number 4. So this is actually the third album the band released, the last album with Vivian Campbell on guitar. I was big into this when it came out. I think that there's some really memorable songs on here. I think for me, this album kind of hasn't aged as well as, as I would have thought. I don't know. I was more into it back then. It still ranks pretty high, as you can see, because I think, I've got an emotional attachment to it because, Dio was one of my favorite bands at the time. I saw them on this tour. It's the last one with Viv. It's a little more kind of mainstreamy sounding. I think the band were going for a little more commercial sound. Obviously, they were selling a lot of records at the time. They were playing big stadiums and arenas, whatnot. The king of rock and roll, as most of these Dio albums have blazing album openers. King of rock and roll, killer. The title track, Sacred Heart, is dynamite. All right. Another Lie, good heavy rocker. Rock and Roll Children, catchy tune. All right. But I think trying to take the formula of Rainbow in the Dark and continue it on from album to album, right? What else? Hungry for Heaven. Another kind of stab at radio-friendly fare, with the synthesizers and whatnot. Again, it's a catchy tune. I'm not that much into it anymore, but I dug it back in the day. Like the Beat of a Heart. Good rocker. Just Another Day. Also pretty solid. Fallen Angels. Solid. Shoot Shoot, fun song, good way to end the album. I think half of this album really works well. The other are great songs, but I just not my cup of tea when I want to listen to Dio stuff. But like I said, it's still ranking pretty high because I think the album itself is very memorable. I almost ranked Lock Up the Wolves ahead of this. And, if you were to ask me next week, I might do that because I think Lock Up the Wolves is a pretty terrific album. And I think, this is also a very strong album. And I think I'm giving it the number 4 slot more out of kind of loyalty after all these years of being a fan, right? But I think that, It's got its merits, right? It's definitely got some good stuff, and I know people are going to rank that pretty high. So I'm going to go with my number 3 with their 4th album from 1987, Dream Evil. First album with Craig Goldie on guitar. I like this album. There's a school of thought for some people who, have really not been into any guitar player who's been in the Dio ranks since Vivian Campbell left. I love Viv too, man. Those first couple albums are great, and he's a great guitar player, and I like a lot of the stuff he's done since, specifically with River Dogs. I can't say the same for a lot of the Def Leppard stuff, but, the Last in Line band is great. I think Viv is a great player, cool guy. But you know what? Dio continued on without him and released a lot of great material, and I never disliked the guitar playing of Craig Goldie. I think he's kind of an underrated player. He's a master riffologist. I think he's a pretty wild soloist as well. Is he the complete virtuoso that Vivian is? Maybe not. But I think he was a good fit for this band. And, of course, this is basically the, Jimmy Bain on bass, Vivian Campbell on... not Vivian Campbell, Vinny Appice on drums, and Craig Goldie on guitar. So, Night People, all right, the title track, Dream Evil, Sunset Superman, underrated heavy song from the band. Just a lot of really good tunes. Faces in the Windows, so many cool songs on here. It's a pretty heavy album. I think this is definitely heavier than Sacred Heart, all right. I think the band just kind of wanted to kind of dial up the heaviness just a little bit. It's not quite as commercial sounding as the one before it. I saw them on this tour as well. A lot of fun. Trying to remember where. Brendan Byrne Arena or Nassau Coliseum, one of the two. I don't remember because I was basically seeing Dio every tour, like in one of those two places. Early in their career, they were playing the Mid-Hudson Civic Center, Poughkeepsie, New York. But then they obviously got bigger and bigger, so they kind of graduated beyond that. Coming in, the top two are not going to be any surprise to anybody. I'm going to go with 1984's Last in Line. All right. As number 2, Claude Schnell in the band on keyboards now, joining the core 4. We Rock, another great kick-ass album opener. The title track, Last in Line, one of my favorite Dio songs. I love a lot of the title tracks that Ronnie and company did on all their albums. Just had that cool, like kind of moody, mid-paced, heavy, epic feel. And I think Last in Line is another one in the long line of those. Breathless, good tune. All right. I Speed at Night, rip-roaring rocker. One Night in the City, big fan of that. Just slow and grinding, kind of doomy. Evil Eyes, very cool song. And Mystery, Mystery kind of commercial sounding, right? Eat Your Heart Out, great tune. And then, of course, Egypt, The Chains Are On. Great, epic, slow, doomy, moody epic. All right, so I dig the Last in Line album. I was big into it at the time. Saw them on that tour as well. Of course, number one's got to be Holy Diver with the original lineup. Top to bottom, hard to beat. I think a pretty perfect album, if you ask my opinion. A lot of strong ones came after it, but I think none of them ever reached the absolute magnificence of this album. Just one classic after another. Stand Up and Shout, another great album opener, one of the best of all time. You got the title track, my favorite Dio song of all time. Love Holy Diver. You got Gypsy, snarling, upbeat, Caught in the Middle, very melodic. My old band that I was in high school, we used to play that song. We played that in Rainbow in the Dark. Don't Talk to Strangers, a top 5 Dio song of all time. Love it. Moody, melodic, just epic sounding. Straight Through the Heart, great pile driving riff. Invisible, another really strong song on here. Of course, you got the legendary Rainbow in the Dark. And then Shame on the Night. Shame on the Night. Awesome stuff. All right. So let's run through my list. All right. So coming at number 1, Holy Diver. Number 2, Last in Line. Number 3, Dream Evil. Number 4, Sacred Heart. Number 5, Lock Up the Wolves. Number 6, Strange Highways. Number 7, Angry Machines. Number 8, Magica. Number 9, Killing the Dragon. And number 10, Master of the Moon. There you have it. Dio, Ronnie, and company. There's the man right there. Doing a little tribute to Ronnie. Miss him so much, man. It's like, there are just days where, especially now, it's like these crazy times, right? A voice like Ronnie James Dio just can kind of come into your day and brighten it and make you think of better times and better days and great memories and all that kind of stuff. I saw Ronnie in concert, whether with Sabbath or the Dio band, so many times. And always a great performance, a great showman, and he really loved his fans. That was the great thing about Ronnie. He loved his fans, and he did everything for his fans. So, one of the greats. May he rest in peace. Ronnie, we miss you. There is my ranking the studio albums of Dio, the band. All right, curious to see what your top 10 are, how you rank them, top 5, whatever. Remember, we all hear these differently, guys. So if there's some of the ones that are lower on my list, some of the later albums that you dig a lot, hey, rank them, put them in your ranking, right? Okay? I mean, I like them all. It's just I like others, because we all have emotional attachments to different albums based on when they came into our lives, right? That's why it's, kind of befuddles me sometimes when people are watching these shows that I do and they take offense at how I ranked albums. It's like, well, you know what? If it means more to you, show us your ranking, right? Don't get on my case about it. It's like that's how I like them, all right? It is what it is. We all like things differently. So there's no right or wrong answer here on any of these shows. There's no right or wrong. I'm not telling you that this is the definitive ranking of Dio. It's just how I rank them, all right? My preference, because I grew up with a lot of this stuff. So the early catalog is near and dear to me because I was a young heavy metal rocker, right? And that's like, when you're young, things hit you differently than sometimes when you're older, right? So anyway, visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, of course, we're on YouTube all the damn time. Pete, what's coming up, you might be asking? Well, don't touch that dial. Because coming up next, all right, for all of you who have been asking and asking and asking and asking and asking and asking and asking to the point of almost being annoying, but I've kind of been very coy about it and not giving away too much. We're going to rank the catalog of Aerosmith coming up next, as well as we're going to do a What Are You Listening to Today episode also right after that. So that's all coming up in succession this morning, so stay tuned. We'll see you real soon. Bye-bye.